Mom forgot to invite Dad to his own 80th at the vineyard, said it was just a small toast. Hours later, she tagged my scammy ex there. When Dad opened the email I queued at dawn, her smile died on the spot. Oh God, I still remember that morning. It started like any other, coffee brewing, sunlight hitting my east-facing windows, my dog Cooper, a warm, furry weight against my ankles. But then, boom, everything shattered in an instant. My finger froze mid-swipe on my iPad. A Facebook notification popped up. Victoria Ellsworth added 24 new photos to the album Dad's 80th birthday celebration. Without even thinking, I tapped it. The Vineyard restaurant. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, Dad's favorite Basil Hayden bourbon. Neat. My stomach twisted into a cold, hard knot as I scrolled, slowly, agonizingly, through the faces. Around that elegant table, there was Dad, silver-haired and perfectly composed. Mom, with that practice smile that gives absolutely nothing away. My sister, Victoria, her diamond earrings, catching the light gleaming. And right beside her, smiling, almost smirking, Thomas Miller, my ex-husband. The timestamp read 8:42 p.m. last night. No, I whispered to my empty kitchen, my voice catching. No, no, no. Cooper whined, pressing his golden head into my suddenly trembling hands. I zoomed in on Thomas's face. That same manipulative charm, the one he once used to convince me to loan him $43,000 for his guaranteed investment. Opportunity. Money I never saw again. This was the same man I had explicitly warned my family about. At Christmas, I swiped to another photo. Victoria was laughing at something Thomas had said, her hand resting on his arm with casual, easy familiarity. And around her neck? Grandmother Warren's pearl necklace. The one that was supposed to be shared between us sisters. I hadn't seen it in years. My breath was coming in short, sharp gasps now. Another swipe. On the table, a 2012 Pinot Noir. The exact vintage I had helped Dad select for a special occasion just last summer. My recommendation for an event I wasn't even told about. Memory ambushed me like a physical blow. Christmas dinner at the lake house. The scent of pine. Fighting a losing battle with Mom's overcooked turkey. I'm telling you, he's targeting seniors with these investment schemes, I'd said, my voice deliberately steady, trying so hard not to sound emotional. He did it to me. He's doing it to others. Mom had set down her fork with that familiar, exasperated sigh. You've always been too dramatic, Eleanor. Perhaps if you'd been more understanding during your marriage. Victoria, rolling her eyes at Mom in that conspiratorial way they'd perfected over decades, had added, maybe if you'd been more supportive, your marriage wouldn't have failed. And Dad? He just stared at his plate, saying nothing. His silence hurt. Worse than their words. Now I understood why. They'd already welcomed Thomas back into their lives. Behind my back. The phone rang, startling me so badly I nearly dropped the iPad. Martha. My best friend since 7th grade, now a retired school principal with an uncanny radar for trouble. I just saw Victoria's post, she said, cutting straight to it. What are you going to do about it this time? This time. The words cut deeper than she knew. How many times had I swallowed my hurt smoothed things over, kept the peace? How many times had I watched Victoria receive all the attention, all the affirmation, the benefit of every single doubt? I don't know, I answered, but my feet were already moving. Past the framed family photo on the mantle, taken before the divorce, back when I still believed family meant protection. Through the hallway where I'd hung my most successful watercolors, the ones featured in Vermont Living magazine, the ones my parents never even mentioned. Into my home office, where the morning sunlight caught the silver strands in my auburn hair as I stood before the filing cabinet marked, Thomas. Records. You have two choices, Martha continued, her voice crisp through the speakerphone. Either you stay silent again, or you stand up for yourself for once. My fingers hovered over the drawer handle. Inside lay every email, every bank statement, Every broken promise. Evidence of the man who had charmed his way into my heart, then methodically drained my savings. The man now sitting beside my father, raising a glass of wine I recommended, while my mother and sister smiled. The man they chose over me. Eleanor, Martha prompted. I stared at my reflection in the window glass, at the woman who had spent a lifetime seeking approval from people determined not to give it. When does protecting family peace become sacrificing your own dignity? The filing cabinet drawer slid open with a sound like truth breaking free. Enough, I whispered, the word a steel-hard vow. Enough is enough. That same night, the filing cabinet drawer slid open again with the whisper of metal against metal. I pulled out the overstuffed folder and placed it on my antique oak desk, the same desk where I'd created award-winning watercolors my family had never bothered to acknowledge. Cooper settled at my feet with a soft whine. I'm okay, boy, I whispered, though we both knew it was a lie. Martha's voice crackled through the speakerphone. Start with the bank statements. Those don't lie. My hands moved with the precision of an artist accustomed to detail work. I arranged the documents in chronological order across the polished wood surface, an archaeological dig of betrayal. The contrast between my meticulously organized home studio and this chaos of paperwork struck me as I smoothed each page. The bank statements told their own damning story. 5 transfers to Thomas. $12,000, $8,000, $15,000, $5,000, and finally, $3,000. Each one accompanied by his handwritten promises of repayment. Once the investors come through, $43,000 vanished like morning mist over Lake Champlain. Look at this, I said, holding up a business pitch deck for Martha to see through the video call. He listed me as a guarantor. My signature. He forged it. Martha leaned closer to her screen. Send that to Walter immediately. I shuffled through more papers and then I froze. Oh God. A photograph slid from between 2 folders. Thomas and Dad at the Hawk Ridge Golf Club, arms around each other's shoulders, smiling like old friends. The date stamp in the corner read January 27th. 3 weeks after I had warned them all at Christmas. My stomach clenched as I pulled up my email. There was more. My mother's name appeared in multiple message threads with Thomas. I clicked on one dated February 14th. Margaret, I appreciate your support with Richard. This investment opportunity will be the perfect retirement cushion for you both. Our meeting next Tuesday should seal the deal. The phone buzzed with a text. Victoria, Mom's convinced Dad that you deserve another chance. Maybe. We all need to put the past behind us. So, this text was from March. They'd been planning this for months, while shutting me out. Martha, I said, my voice steadying with a cold, righteous rage rather than tears. They have a meeting scheduled tomorrow morning at Dad's bank. What? Martha sounded as stunned as I felt. How do you know? I held up my iPad. Victoria's sloppy with her cloud storage. Her calendar is synced to the family share we never disconnected. Investment. Meeting 9 a.m. First Vermont Trust with Thomas M. As I spoke, another memory surfaced with perfect clarity. Age 16. The art scholarship letter in my hands. The prestigious Harrington Foundation offering me a summer residency. Mom's voice cutting through my excitement. Victoria's grades are what really matter for the future, Eleanor. Art is a lovely hobby, but let's keep our priorities straight. I glanced at the Vermont Living magazine on my bookshelf. My watercolor series featured on the cover. 7 months ago. Not a single congratulatory call from any of them. The doorbell rang, and moments later, Martha strode in with a coffee tray and the determined look of a retired school principal who's broken up one too many playground fights. I called David, she announced, setting down the tray. He's joining us by video in 5 minutes. David appeared on my laptop screen precisely on time. At 62, my gallery owner and friend brings both pragmatic business sense and unwavering loyalty. I've been thinking, he said after I'd outlined the situation. Richard trusts his financial advisor more than anyone, even more than Margaret. Martha nodded. Walter Harrison. They've been friends for 30 years. If anyone can get through to Richard about Thomas, it's Walter. That was it. I opened a new email. Subject line, urgent. Before tomorrow's meeting with Thomas Miller. For the next hour, we crafted the message together. Martha helped me choose measured, factual language. David suggested attaching only the most incontrovertible evidence. Include those SEC complaints from his previous business partners, David advised. Walter needs to see the pattern. When we finished, I stared at the send button. My finger hovered, trembling slightly. On the mantle, a framed photo showed Dad teaching me to fish at age 10. His patient hands guiding mine. On the rod, his smile proud as I reeled in my first rainbow trout. What if this tears us apart? Forever? I whispered. Martha squeezed my shoulder. Honey, you're already torn apart. The question is whether you'll let them keep pretending otherwise. I clicked send. For 10 excruciating minutes, we waited in silence. When the response arrived, I read it aloud. Thank you, Eleanor. I've been concerned about this meeting myself. I'll review everything before tomorrow's 9 a.m. appointment. We'll speak soon, Walter. A weight lifted from my shoulders, not completely, but enough to draw a full breath for the first time today. The corners of my mouth twitched upward in what felt like my first genuine smile since seeing those birthday photos. Martha headed to the kitchen and returned with 3 glasses of wine. She raised hers in a toast. 2. Speaking your truth, even when your voice shakes. David lifted his glass from miles away. 2. Standing your ground. I looked toward the window, where my reflection stared back at me. Silver-streaked auburn hair, lines of determination forming around my mouth. What would you risk to protect someone who hasn't protected you? Before either could answer, my phone rang. Walter's name flashed on the screen. Eleanor, he said, his voice urgent. I've found something you need to see. Right now. I stood before the canvas at dawn, my brush gliding across the surface in violent strokes. The seascape took shape, dark clouds gathering over turbulent waters, reflecting the storm inside me. Cooper dozed near the radiator, his gentle snoring the only sound besides brush against canvas. My phone buzzed for the 3rd time this morning. Victoria again. What did you do? Dad just called the investment meeting critical and canceled his golf game. Answer me, Eleanor. I set my brush down and studied the message. The old Eleanor would have responded immediately, apologizing for something she hadn't done. The woman I was becoming placed the phone face down without replying. The soft morning light filtered through my studio blinds as I washed pigment from my hands. Today called for something different than paint-spattered jeans and an oversized sweater. I selected a forest green blazer that brought out the gold flecks in my hazel eyes, charcoal trousers, and my grandmother's pearl earrings. Not armor exactly, but close. The phone rang as I was applying mascara. Walter Harrison, Dad's financial advisor for 30 years. Good morning, Eleanor, he said. His Vermont accent more pronounced than usual. Richard wants you there. I suggested it would be prudent. The mascara wand froze midair. Dad asked for me specifically? His exact words were, tell my daughter I expect her presence. So yes, he wants you there. My stomach tightened. This was the first direct request he'd made in months. Your father needs to see this unfold himself, Walter said, his voice softening. I've reviewed everything you sent. It's exactly what I suspected, but couldn't prove. I closed my eyes, steadying myself. I'll be there. The First Vermont Trust. Conference room, 9 sharp. After hanging up, I retrieved a leather portfolio from my desk. Inside lay every document Martha helped me organize last night, bank statements, emails, SEC complaints. I added one more item, a photograph of Thomas and Dad at the golf club, the bourbon between them. The same brand from the birthday dinner I wasn't invited to. That morning, the bank's granite facade loomed against the spring sky as I parked. My fingers gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles blanched white. I breathed deeply, remembering Martha's words. Asterisk, you're not creating a problem. You're exposing one that already exists. Asterisk, the wood-paneled conference room hummed with subdued conversation when I entered. 8 men in their 60s and 70s, Dad's friends and fellow investors, clustered around a polished table. Their eyes followed me with curiosity as I took a seat near the door. Dad sat at the head of the table, his silver hair combed perfectly, his posture rigid as always. Our eyes met briefly. He offered a curt nod before looking away. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. Walter sat to Dad's right, his expression professionally neutral, except for the barely perceptible wink he gave me. Then Thomas strode in, confidence radiating from every pore. His charcoal suit cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. His handmade Italian shoes gleamed under the recessed lighting. His smile faltered momentarily when he spotted me, but recovered so quickly I almost doubted what I saw. "Gentlemen," he began, ignoring my presence entirely, "thank you for this opportunity to present Fortify, the first AI-integrated predictive model for retirement portfolios." The presentation unfolded with slick precision. Graphs materialized on the screen, promising guaranteed 22% returns and unprecedented market resilience. I recognized every slide from the files. Thomas had shown me 2 years ago when he first asked for just a small loan to get things started. I remained silent, watching Dad's face as Thomas spoke. The slight furrow in his brow deepened with each passing minute. He was beginning to see the patterns. Walter waited until Thomas paused for questions. "Mr. Miller, could you explain why your previous venture with identical projections failed in Massachusetts?" Thomas adjusted his tie. "That was a different application of the technology. Market conditions weren't optimal." "Interesting," Walter continued, "because the prospectus is nearly identical." Thomas's confidence flickered like a television with poor reception. "The core technology remains proven, but we've refined the implementation significantly." My moment arrived. I slid copies of my documentation to each person at the table. "These are records of the $43,000 Thomas borrowed from me," I said, my voice steadier than my heartbeat. "Money he claimed was for a guaranteed investment. The graphics in today's presentation are identical to what he showed me 2 years ago." Murmurs rippled around the table. Thomas's face flushed crimson. "This is personal," he shouted, jabbing a finger toward me. "She's trying to sabotage me because our marriage failed, because I moved on." Dad's knuckles whitened around his pen. "Richard," Thomas said, his voice regaining composure, "you know I've been nothing but honest with you. Eleanor has always been emotional, especially about our divorce." Walter cleared his throat. "The SEC has already opened an investigation based on 3 similar complaints in the New England area. I confirmed this yesterday." Thomas lunged toward me, knocking his chair backward. "You vindictive bitch. You've been planning this for months." The bank security officer stepped forward from his position by the door. 2 other men at the table rose to their feet. The conference room door flew open. Mom strode in, Victoria closed behind. Their matching expressions of outrage froze as they took in the scene. Thomas restrained by security, papers scattered across the table, the investors' faces a mixture of shock and anger. "What have you done now?" Mom demanded, her gaze locked on me. Victoria stepped forward. "You're destroying this family out of spite. You couldn't stand that Dad and Thomas were reconnecting." I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Dad's voice cut through the room. "That's enough." His tone left no room for argument. "Eleanor saved us from a serious mistake today. Thomas has been lying to all of us." The silence that followed felt thick enough to touch. Minutes later, I stood alone in the parking lot, watching Mom and Victoria drive away with Dad in the back seat. His expression through the window was unreadable, but he'd given me a slight nod. Before getting into the car, Walter approached, hands in his pockets. "Your father asked me to tell you he'll call you later." Will he actually call? Walter smiled. For the first time in years, I think Richard Warren might be seeing clearly. Give him time. I nodded, noticing several of Dad's friends walking toward me from the bank entrance. Their expressions held something I'd rarely experienced from my parents' social circle: respect. The truth was finally emerging. The cost was yet to be determined. My phone buzzed before sunrise the next day. Cooper lifted his head from the foot of my bed, watching as I squinted at the screen. The notification banner cut through the pre-dawn darkness. Victoria Ellsworth has tagged you in a post. No, I whispered, but my finger tapped it anyway. Victoria's words punched harder than any fist. Some people can't stand seeing others happy. They'd rather destroy a family than admit they're wrong. I scrolled down. Mother's comment sat beneath it. A calculated missile. Family loyalty matters more than being right, Victoria. Some people never learned that lesson. The comments flooded in beneath, confused questions, vague supportive statements from people who had no idea what they were supporting. My cousin asking what happened. My mother's bridge partner sending prayer hands. 27 reactions already, and it was barely 6 a.m. Cooper nudged my hand with his cold nose as my breath caught. I set the phone face down on my nightstand, then picked it up again. Screenshot, screenshot, screenshot. Evidence gathering had become my morning ritual. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of a public response. Victoria had always played to an audience. I refused to join her performance. My coffee had barely finished brewing when the first text arrived from Thomas. You've violated our confidentiality agreement. My lawyer will be in touch. I stared at the words, hot mug warming my suddenly cold fingers. What confidentiality agreement? We never signed anything during our divorce. It was a bluff, one of his classic intimidation tactics. Mother's email arrived next, subject line. What have you done? Eleanor. You've manipulated Walter with false information. Your father is devastated by your behavior. If you had concerns, you should have come to us privately instead of humiliating the family. I've always tried to protect you from the consequences of your emotional decisions, but this time you've gone too far. Margaret. Not Mom. Not even your mother. Just Margaret. I forwarded everything to Walter without comment, then added Lisa, my lawyer, to the thread. The evidence kept mounting. Victoria's voicemail came an hour later. Eleanor, I don't know what kind of professional help you need, but these delusions about Thomas have to stop. Dad is beside himself. Call me when you're ready to apologize. I played it twice, listening for any hint of the sister I once knew. There was nothing but cold calculation in her voice. By afternoon, I had dressed for my gallery opening with mechanical precision. Black dress, silver jewelry I designed myself, hair swept into a smooth chignon. I looked collected, professional, unbroken. The gallery lights cast warm halos around my watercolors, Vermont landscapes reinvented through memory and emotion, but the usual cluster of family members was conspicuously absent. No Richard, no Margaret, no Victoria. Stunning work, Eleanor, Richard's friend Gordon said, clasping my hand. His wife Judith stood beside him, her eyes communicating more than her words. Thomas was escorted from the bank yesterday, Gordon whispered, leaning close. Walter isn't discussing details, but everyone knows something serious happened. Judith touched my arm. We've known your father for 30 years. He'll come around. More of Dad's friends arrived throughout the evening. Dr. Coleman, his golf partner, the Hendersons from the Lake Association. Small gestures of support in a town rapidly dividing into camps. The gallery door opened at 8:42 p.m. My nephew James stood awkwardly in the entrance, scanning the room until he spotted me. Mom doesn't know I'm here, he said without preamble when he reached me. At 30, he had Victoria's height but none of her calculation. Thomas approached me last month about investing in his company. My stomach clenched. What did you tell him? James pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. I told him I needed time to consider it. Then he sent me these The texts filled the screen. Your Aunt Eleanor is mentally unstable. She's been spreading lies because she's bitter about our divorce. Your grandfather agrees with me. That's why he's investing. She's always been jealous of your mother's success. Don't mention our conversation to her. I'm including you because I see potential in you that others in your family might miss. Classic Thomas. Isolating his targets, creating divisions, making each person feel special and seen. The exact tactics he used on me. I didn't believe him, James said, pocketing his phone. But Mom does. She always has. For the first time today, tears pricked behind my eyes. Not from Victoria's attacks or Mother's coldness, but from this unexpected alliance. The family's united front was developing. Hairline cracks. Thank you, I whispered, squeezing his arm. This means more than you know. Behind us, Martha's daughter Sarah studied documents spread across a gallery bench, a yellow legal pad covered in notes. These contract violations are clear-cut, she said, looking up as we approached. I've drafted a cease and desist response to Thomas's threats. She passed me a business card. Walter connected me with the bank's legal team. They want to speak with you tomorrow. The walls Thomas built to contain me were crumbling, each threat becoming another brick in my foundation instead. My phone vibrated with a news alert. The local business newsletter had published a brief notice about an SEC investigation into investment fraud targeting seniors in Burlington. Thomas wasn't named, but anyone paying attention would connect the dots. Before I could process this, Victoria's name flashed on my screen. Are you trying to humiliate us all? She demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut. I took a deep breath, stepping away from the crowd into the quiet back office. The truth isn't something I created, Victoria. It's something I finally stopped hiding. The line went silent. Then another call from her. Then the sound of our father's voice in the background saying my name. Dad wants to see you, Victoria said stiffly. He's coming over tomorrow morning. After we disconnected, I stood motionless in the quiet room. 3 months since Christmas dinner. 3 months since they chose Thomas over me after my divorce. Tomorrow, for the first time, my father would face me alone. James appeared in the doorway. You okay? I met his concerned gaze and found myself nodding. I was finally standing in my truth. It hurt, but not as much as the lies did. Next morning, Victoria stood in my living room like a fortress under siege, arms crossed over her cashmere sweater. Her arrival shattered the fragile peace Dad and I had established moments before. You've turned Dad against us all, she said, her voice brittle as autumn leaves. Dad sat in my reading chair, his presence an unexpected ballast in this storm. Cooper pressed against my leg, sensing the tension crackling between us. I simply showed him the truth he wasn't allowed to see. I replied, keeping my voice level despite the fire burning through my veins. The accumulated weight of years, decades of being dismissed, pulsed behind my temples. The doorbell interrupted whatever barbed response Victoria had ready. When I opened it, Walter Harrison stood on my porch, clutching a thick manila folder with both hands. I hope I'm not intruding, he said, though the timing felt orchestrated. Dad must have called him. Perfect timing, Dad said, confirming my suspicion. Victoria needs to see everything. Walter spread documents across my coffee table with methodical precision. Bank statements, email printouts, meeting minutes, a constellation of evidence forming a picture Victoria could no longer deny. This is Margaret arranging meetings between Thomas and your father, Walter said, pointing to an email chain. She specifically requested these meetings be kept from you, Eleanor. Victoria's face paled as she read the words in our mother's distinctive formal tone. Richard, I've arranged for Thomas to present his investment opportunity Tuesday at 2. Best we not mention this to Eleanor given her irrational attitudes. There's more, Walter continued. A pattern of manipulation targeting your father's retirement accounts. Thomas requested initial investments of $50,000. Victoria sank onto my sofa, her knees seemingly unable to support her. "Mom said you were jealous of my marriage," she whispered. "That you wanted to punish Thomas because your relationship failed." The words punched through my chest. "And you believed her." "She's our mother." Victoria's voice cracked. "Why would she lie?" Dad leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Because she believed what she wanted to believe, just like I did." The painful recognition settled over us. Our family system had been unhealthy for decades. The roots of this betrayal ran deeper than Thomas, deeper than the money. My phone rings, cutting through the heavy silence. The caller ID reads, SEC Investigator Daniels. "May I put this on speaker?" I ask, answering. "Miss Ellsworth? We've arrested Thomas Miller this morning on multiple fraud charges," the crisp voice announced. "I wanted you to hear it from us first, since your evidence was instrumental in our case." Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. "There's something else you should know," the investigator continued. "We have documentation that Margaret Ellsworth was warned about Mr. Miller's schemes by another victim 3 months ago. She appears to have disregarded these warnings entirely." The blood drained from Victoria's face. Her shoulders collapsed as though the last support beam had been pulled from beneath her. When the call ends, Victoria stared at the silent phone, then at the evidence spread across my table, then at me. Something shifted in her eyes, the armor of certainty cracking. "I believed what Mom wanted me to believe," she said finally. Her voice small, stripped of its usual polish. "But I see it now. We hurt you. And I'm sorry." She opened her purse with trembling fingers and removed a stack of paper. She handed me printed copies of every manipulative social media post she made, each one annotated with her own handwriting. This was wrong. This was untrue. This was cruel. The genuine remorse cracked something open inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a possibility I hadn't considered. Dad watched us, witness to this first fragile step toward healing. "I need some time away from the house," he said after a long silence. "And from Margaret." Victoria and I both looked at him, startled by the firmness in his voice. "The lake house is empty," he continued. "Eleanor, would you stay there with me for a while? Help me figure things out." Before I could answer, Victoria asks, "Could I visit you both there?" Her voice held none of its usual entitlement. "Only if you come." Without the performance, I said, surprising myself with the boundary. "No more posts, no more pretending." "I promise," Victoria whispered. Walter discreetly gathered his papers. "Thomas has accepted a plea deal, full restitution to all victims, plus penalties." "And Margaret?" I asked. "Still denying everything," Dad says, the pain evident in the new lines around his eyes. "After 52 years of marriage, I filed for separation." He reached into his pocket and withdrew something that caught the light. "Grandmother Warren's pearl necklace. Your grandmother wanted you to have these," he said, placing them in my palm. I should have ensured that happened years ago. The weight of the pearls in my hand brought unexpected tears. Victoria watched, and for the first time in my memory, there was no jealousy in her gaze, only quiet support. Late that week, as we helped Dad move essentials to the lake house, the three of us paused on the dock overlooking the water. The afternoon sun turned the lake to hammered gold. Is forgiveness possible without accountability? I wondered aloud, not really expecting an answer. What would you require to rebuild trust with someone who betrayed you? Before either could respond, Cooper raced past us and launched himself into the lake with a magnificent splash, soaking us all. Our startled laughter rose, genuine, unguarded, the first moment of authentic joy we'd shared in years. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed through the boathouse windows, casting honeyed light across my easel. Richard installed these windows himself last month, working through the soreness in his hands to create this sanctuary for me. The lake stretched beyond, a mirror of blue serenity that once felt miles away from my life. My brush hovers over the canvas where 4 figures take shape. Richard, with his silver hair and newfound straight posture. Victoria, her face softened without the hard edges of defensiveness. James, his youthful energy a bridge between generations, and me. I step back, studying the composition. On the right side, an empty space remains, the ghost of Margaret. Not erased, but acknowledged in absence. You don't have to leave that space blank, Richard says. From the doorway, coffee mug in hand. Your art, your rules. Some absences need recognition, I answer, wiping cadmium red from my fingers. Pretending she was never there would be another kind of lie. The brush feels alive in my hand as I add bold strokes to Richard's portrait, capturing the quiet dignity he's reclaimed these past 3 months. My colors have changed, vibrant reds, deep purples, confident yellows replacing the muted palette I once hid behind. Through the open door, I hear Victoria's car on the gravel driveway. The sound no longer tightens my stomach into knots. Grocery bags rustle as she unloads them, calling out to James, who emerges from the woodshop, sawdust painting his dark hair with premature gray. Grandpa, I found that Brazilian rosewood you wanted, he announces, helping Victoria with the heaviest bags. Richard squeezes my shoulder before leaving to help them. I watch them move around each other in the kitchen, Victoria unpacking fresh vegetables, Richard preparing fish for dinner, James setting the old oak table with casual precision. 3 months ago, this domestic ballet would have been unimaginable. The phone rings. Walter's name flashes on the screen. It's official, he says without preamble. Thomas's sentencing is complete. Full restitution of $43,000, plus interest. My paintbrush freezes mid-stroke. And Margaret. Walter's voice softens. She's joined a support group for family members of fraud victims. First step toward acknowledging what happened. The information washes over me like cool water, not victory, not vindication, something quieter and more profound. What will you do with the money? Walter asks. I watch Richard showing James how to fillet the fish. Victoria washing berries at the sink. There's an arts program for seniors at the community center. They could use it more than me. After we hang up, I wipe my hands and join my family, the one I lost and found and rebuilt. We sit at the weathered kitchen table, sunshine falling across our faces. I've been thinking about boundaries, I say, accepting the glass of water Victoria passes me, about what we need to maintain this progress. Like regular check-ins? Victoria suggests, her usual defensiveness absent. Or, certain topics we agree to handle differently. Richard nods. Your judgment deserves respect. I've learned that the hard way. Victoria touches my wrist hesitantly. I want this to work, Eleanor. I'm committed to making things right. Later, after dinner, Victoria shows me her phone, a social media post, coffee mugs on the dock. Steam rising in early morning light. The caption reads simply, no filters, just truth. I'm framing this, I tell her, next to the old posts, to remember our journey. At sunset, Richard and I sit on the dock, watching light transform the water from blue to amber to deepest purple. If they had invited me to that birthday dinner, none of this would have happened. I reflect, bare feet skimming the cool water. Richard's eyes, clearer now without the burden of pretense, meet mine. And we would all still be living a lie. The truth of it settles over me. I lost a mother, but I reclaimed my voice. Victoria approaches with 3 glasses of Pinot Noir, the same vintage from Dad's birthday. The wine catches the last light as she hands us each a glass. What part of your voice have you silenced to keep the peace? I ask, raising my glass in a toast. That extends beyond our circle, beyond this moment, beyond this lake reflecting the first evening stars.